The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 101. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of outstanding women finding their inner journey to self-confidence 5 days a week. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com to check out amazing blog articles and our killer resources. Hello friend, welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have a special lady on today. She is from my city as well, the city of Toronto. She is a branding and marketing consultant with her movement, which is called the Anti-Hustle movement, and she will explain a little bit more about that. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Lara McCulloch. Lara, how are you doing today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, Sheena. As you mentioned, I'm a branding and marketing strategist and have been for about 20 years. So I started when I was 5, if you do the math. In my previous life as a consultant for advertising and branding agencies, I worked with really big names. So a lot of people might be familiar with like Cadbury-Adams and Unilever and Shell. But 9 years ago, I started my own consulting firm, where I'm kind of focused on building growth and reputation and evangelism for small businesses. And I've done some pretty cool things over the last number of years in owning that business. I founded one of the world's first Twitter communities, which was written about by Tim O'Reilly in the Twitter book. I get to travel throughout the world as a keynote speaker, which is really cool. So I've got to see some awesome places, including where you were born, in the Philippines. I sit on a number of advisory boards and write my column for a magazine. And in 2014, I started the Start Some Shift podcast, which was really amazing. But I'm also a mom and training for my first fitness competition in April, which is a good supplement, I guess, to what I do in my everyday life. And in a few months, I'm going to be launching the Start Some Shift Academy, which will be teaching coaches, consultants, and strategists, as well as business service providers like copywriters and graphic designers, how to build a lucrative lifestyle business with only 2 to 4 clients, working part-time, and not spending a dime on marketing.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a plan.
Just a few things.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And that's pretty cool, right? I mean, a lot of people are like, that can't be done. How is that possible? And I always believe anything's possible, right? If someone does, if it can be done once, it can be done again. So thanks for sharing that, Lara. And, what's your cultural background?
Oh, wow. How long do you have? I kind of refer to myself as like the human version of a mutt. I'm Canadian born, but my background is Russian, Austrian, Spanish, and British, with a little bit of Irish thrown in there, just for good measure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And so, Lara, what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
Oh, I love this question. A few years ago, I put a quote actually as the wallpaper of my cell phone. And that quote was, "You are only confined by the walls you build yourself." And the reason why I love this quote so much is that we have to be aware that the only things that hold us back from feeling confident is ourselves. And we try to tell ourselves that other people make us feel doubtful of ourselves. So maybe we had, a boyfriend who said certain things to us, or we had a really bad childhood and our parents told us that we weren't good enough. There's no doubt that type of stuff impacts us. It conditions us to think in certain ways. But that's all it does. It conditions us, but it's not our reality. And so we create the confines of what we think we're capable of based on that conditioning. And that's why that quote was so powerful to me. And it's not only resonated in my business life, but in my personal life. I mentioned to you right at the very beginning that I'm training for my first fitness competition. And I think that's a really good analogy. When I first started training, I was terrible and I couldn't lift any weight whatsoever. And I had to fight through thoughts in my head that came from, years of believing these types of things like, oh, you can't do this. Look at that other person over there. They're lifting 3 times the weight you are. You might as well just stay at home. And those are things I had to work through and battle through every single day. And all of a sudden, as I pushed through those thoughts, I was lifting heavier and I was going to the gym regularly and my body was changing. And breaking through that conditioning that we place on ourselves is no different. So we have to fight through those years and years of thinking, break down those walls, and then we have to build.
I love that quote. Thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, there's so many, especially I find women, we're always so conditioned to people's perception of us. And we have to realize that, it's always up to us to make the decision to think what we can do and what we're capable of, right? I mean, I was the same thing when it came to fitness. I wanted to start running and, I went with a buddy and I could not even run a lap. I was like dying,
Yep.
But I just kept on doing it, right? And now here, I'm currently in Hawaii and, I run outside every single day, even if it's just for half an hour, right? Because, it's just doing the thing every single day that will get you that will help you become better and better. So I really love that. Thanks for sharing that. And, Lara, in your own words, how would you define self-confidence?
Well, just building off of what you just said, like oftentimes as women, we look at these experts, people who, who are number one or number two or really high up there, and we think we could never be like them. But they all started the exact same place we started, and we forget that. So, to me, self-confidence is when you free yourself of the shackles that you've put on to restrain yourself, and that you're not afraid of the life that you deserve anymore, and the definition of what you deserve has changed. So it all starts from kind of recognizing that you have to start, and you have to start somewhere, and believing that you deserve more than where you are today, and just freeing yourself of those shackles, breaking down those walls.
Thank you for that definition. And I love that, breaking down the shackles, because I'm sure we all have, at one point in our time, shackles that just keep us from, pretty much living the life that we want. So I appreciate that definition. And Lara, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
Well, I'm a little cautious of this because to me, building self-confidence is a never-ending process. So I would say before I really made the decision to make a concerted effort to kind of break through those walls, I was riddled with fears, and everybody has fears, and they have their own types of fears that they deal with. But those fears kept me from trying new things and experiencing new things. And so life existed within the confines of my comfort zone. And what that produced was a life that was safe. So I never really had to feel very much fear, but it was also really boring. And I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't want to live in my heart a boring life.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes I was like that too. I was afraid to do anything, right? Like not even, just go out and do something totally different, right? Because I was always afraid of like what could go wrong instead of thinking what could go right. And, sometimes I'd used to be, I worked in an office and I'd be sitting in my cubicle thinking like, this can't be it. There has to be something more, right? I mean, it's like, I can't just go in and out Monday to Friday, do this the whole thing, kind of like Groundhog Day, the movie. You just do the same thing over and over again. So I totally understand what you went through. And, what was that moment in your life when that aha moment when you realized, you don't have to live life full of fears and you can go do your own thing?
Okay, I've got a good story, but I want to give a little bit of a backstory so that you understand where I was when this happened in my life. So I was working agency side. I was working for those branding and marketing and advertising agencies. I was working 15-hour days. I was working my weekends. I was forgetting to eat because I was too busy. Like that was my life, because at that point I wanted to climb the corporate ladder and I wanted to crash through the glass ceiling. But I was also recognizing at that point in my life, it was very pivotal that I was getting burnt out and I was not enjoying life. I was creating all of this to earn a certain income, but I was never really able to enjoy that income. So I actually went on a reset weekend and I decided to go over to my Oma and Opa's cottage up north. So my Oma and Opa is grandma and grandpa in Austrian. So here I was at my Oma and Opa's cottage. It was really early in the morning, and my Opa and I were sitting on the dock overlooking the lake, listening to the loons. And we were sitting in silence, both kind of consumed in our own thoughts, and all of a sudden my Opa broke the silence and he turned to me and he said, Lara, you go your entire life planning for the future. And then one day you wake up and you realize you're living the future. So the future's here. There's no more planning to be had. And that statement just hit me like somebody punched me hard in the stomach. And I'd heard, the advice like life is short, life is fleeting, blah, 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 blah. It never really made much of a difference to me. But that statement that my Opa made was instrumental to me deciding in that moment that I wanted to stop thinking about what I could do or should do in the future and start doing it now. And that's when I started my business. So that was my aha moment when I realized that I needed to kind of face some of those fears in order to taste new things, and that the exquisite part of life was actually living outside of the lines that I was drawing for myself. And that was the moment I decided to build a business around how I wanted my life to feel. And I didn't want to feel that rush. I didn't want to feel the hustle. I didn't want to feel the burnout anymore. I wanted to feel a sense of ease. And that's what I've done for the last 9 years, is live that business.
That is an amazing story. And I love how, you just set out an intention saying, I want a business where I feel good about it, right? Because there's people out there who have businesses and they still get burnt out, right? They still get burnt out. They still work 15-hour days. They still, forget to eat and stuff, and they still can't enjoy the income that they created, right? Because for me, what's the point in having a business if you're still working like having a job, right? You're overworked, you're burnt out. You can't even enjoy, the money that you create. So, I'm really glad you were able to find that. And, what's your life like now after that discovery?
My life is awesome. I try, I experiment, I fail, I laugh, I grow, and I learn through that process. For the past 9 years, I have not woken up to an alarm clock. I don't wear a watch, even though I love the look of watches. I don't wear one very purposely. I don't have those Sunday night sweats anymore. So, that Sunday would come and all I'd be thinking about that Monday was the next day. I now spend an hour and a half in the gym every day. I meditate, I do yoga, I meet friends with coffee. I determine my hours. I work with clients I love. I'm not a stressed out mom. I can be present with my son, which is really amazing. And I still get to earn great money, but I now do what I love. So ultimately, it's all about feeling confident enough to go forward in the path of my dreams. And that has afforded me the life that I had always wished that I had. When I was working those crazy hours, all I really wanted was to be able to earn great money. That was important. I have a certain lifestyle that I want to give to my son, but I wanted to enjoy life. I wanted to feel life. I wanted to feel vibrant and excited, not, get caught up in the monotony and just the stress of working hard.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Lara. And it's true, right? Sometimes we forget that, we're doing certain things because we want the quality of life, right? Having that lifestyle that you want for you. So, I'm glad that you were able to share that, and maybe it can help some listeners out there realize, are the things that they're doing really, benefiting them, or is it really hurting them, right? And,
yes.
And, money's great, but if you can't even enjoy the money, what's the point, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. And, Lara, if one of our listeners is listening to your story, she's, she's pumped, she's inspired to take action in her own life, and she's going through her own journey of self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
So I'm actually going to give you one tip that's broken down into 5 tips. How about that, eh?
Sounds
Living
good.
outside the lines. Okay, so I wear a necklace every single day, and embossed in the necklace is the word shift. So my podcast is called Start Some Shift. My program that I'm developing is the Start Some Shift Academy. Shift to me is a very powerful word because it suggests transition and movement. And so if I break down the letters of shift and I invert them, so I start off with the T, then the F, then the I, then the H, then the S, those are kind of the 5 tips that I have for anybody who wants to kind of get moving and get started and feeling more self-confident. So the first thing is the T, which is truth. You have to first be true to what it is that you need to change. So you have to first identify what needs to be changed. And this is where you're experiencing the self-doubt. You cannot fix it if you don't recognize that it exists. And I'm assuming your listeners have already kind of, if they're listening to your podcast, they're already kind of here. So the challenge with the T is to really understand what conditioning is holding you back. So it's not even just understanding that you need to get over self-doubt and start experiencing self-confidence. It's understanding the conditioning that's holding you back. The second letter is the F, right? So this is focus. Improving self-confidence overall can feel overwhelming. So what does that mean? When somebody says, I want to feel more self-confident, there are so many aspects of your life where confidence can be hindered. It can be when I look in the mirror, I don't feel very confident about what I see. Or, certain relationships I have with people that I love, I don't feel very confident in building those. Or, I don't feel confident in business, selling myself. So if I just focus on improving self-confidence overall, that can be way too overwhelming, and there's just too many areas potentially to fix. So really focus on biting off a small bite instead of the whole thing. So the challenge here is figure out what are the one or two areas you really want to focus in on and start there. You don't start with the big overarching area of self-confidence. What specific one or two areas in your life do you want to focus in on? And then the third letter is the I. And you mentioned this actually earlier, Sheena. You mentioned the word intention. I think intention is so very important because in all aspects of our life, you will see improvement where you focus your energy. And the same is true with self-confidence. So you have to make a concerted effort to have an intention to improve your confidence in those one or two areas that you want to focus in on. Now, I refer to this as you need to have a why that makes you cry. So the reason why you're doing the change, why you're becoming more self-confident has to be bigger than the self-doubt. And it should be tied to an emotional trigger. So I'm going to give you an example of this. When I talk to people and I say, why is it important for you to build your business? Why is it important for you to grow your business? And a lot of people will say, because I want to earn more money. That is a very rational reason why. It's not an emotional reason why. And usually when I probe and I say, well, why? What is it about earning more money that's important to you? Why are you focused on more money? What is it that you want to achieve? What do you want to feel? What are your fears? What are your dreams? And once they can start to talk about it more emotionally, like, I want to give my son the life that I never had, or I want to, finally be able to move to Paris, France, and live the life I've always wanted to live. That's when you're getting somewhere close. And so for the listeners, when you're thinking about improving your self-confidence in those one or two areas that you want to focus in on, ask yourself, what's the why that makes you want to cry? What's that emotional trigger? Because when those moments of self-doubt come out and you got that voice in your head saying, don't do it, oh, I don't know, you're going to hear those voices cropping up again. That reason why has to be bigger than those reasons why not. The fourth letter is H, and that's habit. So here's the really amazing thing about this. You're only going to really experience change when you are habitually trying. And this is where that gym analogy comes into play. Like, I'm never going to be able to build the physique that I'm looking for if I'm not in the gym every single day. And that requires consistent effort. But what a lot of people experience is failure because they don't quite feel self-confidence yet. So I have to keep practicing it. You want me to habitually do it, but I'm not feeling it yet. So if you don't feel that self-confidence yet, then fake it. And that might sound really, really, really strange, but let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I speak to audiences all around the world, and usually every time I speak to a new audience, I'm nervous all over again. But when I step up on stage, nobody knows how nervous I am because I step into character. It's like I pull on a mask and I pull on a new outfit and I step out on that stage, and that character exudes confidence. Nobody knows. So whether you're presenting to a new client, whether you're speaking to somebody new, whether you're having a conversation with somebody that makes you feel nervous, oftentimes when you're in this practice stage, you need to feel falsely confident. And eventually what happens, think about it as practicing. I'm going to practice feeling confident. I might not intuitively feel it yet, but I'm going to fake it. I'm going to practice it. And eventually you're going to start to feel it. And once it becomes habit, then it becomes your reality. So the challenge here is do it again, keep getting into the habit of experiencing what it is you want to feel until it becomes second nature. And then that last letter, the letter S, is second nature. And that's when your habit becomes reality. And that doesn't mean that once you're self-confident in those one or two areas, you've absolved yourself of feeling nervous ever again, because goodness only knows. Every time I step up on stage, there's nervousness, and I have to go through this process all over again. But it gets easier and easier and easier every time. And it starts to become your mindset as opposed to work. And so those are kind of the 5 breakdown tips that I'd have for your listeners on how to become more self-confident.
I love those 5 tips, and I like how you have different meanings for all of them, that they're all great. So thank you so much. I mean, I even had some breakthroughs out of them because, if we don't do things, like you said, habitually, how do we expect to become more self-confident? Not saying you're going to have 100% because no one ever does. I still get nervous going on podcasts, interviewing people, even asking people to be interviewed, but it doesn't stop me, right? Kind of like,
yes,
feel the fear and do it anyway. So
yes,
thank you so much for these tips. And, Lara, if our listeners want to get to know a little bit more of what you do, about more of your movement, or just, want to know about you in general, is there any social media profiles or any links we can connect with?
Yeah, for sure. So you can look up Lara McCulloch Start Some Shift on Facebook, and I have a page as well as a group called Start Some Shift. They can listen to the Start Some Shift podcast, or you can visit my website, which is laramcculloch.com
for their business. I have a really amazing article that I wrote that gives 4 really compelling, very easy to implement tips to help people start to build an anti-hustle business for themselves. So I'll give you that link as well that you can include on the show notes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that article. I'm sure all our listeners will love reading that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Lara, you can also head on over to the selfconfidence.com and search for Lara's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else we talked about. And I just want to thank Lara for taking the time to do this, share her story, share her tips. So fortunate to have her on. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Awesome. And so listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you later. Bye for now. Thank you for connecting with us on the Tao of Self-Confidence. Visit thetaoofselfconfidence.com for links to everything we chatted about, as well as killer resources, gifts, and so much more.